Are you ready for an After Party Season 2? I know I am. Let's talk about the first episode. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporium's TV review of the After Party Season 2 Episode 1, which is titled Aniq. This is directed by Appel. It's written by Christopher Miller and Anthony King. So just to let you know, this will be a spoiler discussion for each individual episode. Their first two episodes are releasing on the same day, so there'll be two separate videos. The first season of the After Party was an absolute delight to watch. It was funny. It was entertaining. It was the idea of the fact that each episode was like a different genre of TV or film was absolutely incredible to watch. And the fact that Ben Schwartz was the killer, spoiler, he was the killer, if you've seen it, was pretty incredible. Not in the fact that he was a killer. It was the fact that it took 10 episodes and was actually written well enough and directed well enough that you actually were guessing up until the very last episode, to the very last moment. And that's quality writing. That's actually exceptional writing, to be fairly honest. So, you know, it was a very thrilling season, had a great cast of characters. I just absolutely loved it, but I didn't do the first season review because I just didn't have time. It was a weird situation, but I did watch each individual episode. So with season 2 now on the horizon and officially here as of these reviews, I was going and decided that I have time and I'm going to do an episode by episode basis spoiler discussion for each episode, because I think it would be fun to, as the story rolls along, kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what I think is happening. And once again, this is probably going to be a series that up until the very last episode, it will be kind of who did it. Maybe it was this person, maybe it was this person. And, you know, that's just how the story in this series rolls. So I was really anticipating that this was going to be a pretty good series, because once again, Christopher Miller is one of the writers of the series, you know, of Lord and Miller. And of course, they bring in people that have worked on Silicon Valley, who have worked on Pen 15, who've worked on all these great comedy series. So I was anticipating that this was going to be a great season. And on top of everything, unlike a Hercule Poirot series, you know, with, you know, the idea of bringing in different cast of characters instead of outside of Hercules Poirot, this actually brings back three main characters from the first season, which includes Sam Richardson, Zoe Chao, and of course Tiffany Haddish as the characters from the first season. But like the first season, these three characters that were from the first season get involved with another murder. They become part of this situational problem where somebody in the sphere that they're in is murdered, and it could be any one of these cast of characters like the first season. So my hope going into the series, especially with, you know, it being a second season, is it doesn't drop the ball and that the villain or the killer is revealed in very interesting, very last episode type fashion like the first season was. And so here we are. I'm doing the first episode first, and then of course the second episode will come in the same day because they were released on the same day. And then week by week after that, I will do a run through of each episode. So just to give you like 8 or 9, 10 weeks or whatever the series ends up running to be. And so with that said, this first episode is called Aniq Part 2, the sequel, which is actually a great title. Directed by Appel, who of course did Weird, the Al Yankovic movie, which was one of my favorite movies of last year. It's written by Christopher Miller and Anthony King, who Anthony King, of course, was part of Silicon Valley, which actually Zach Woods was part of. So that's pretty great. So I love that simple fact that there's like a connection there. And Christopher Miller and, you know, Phil Lord are, you know, pretty well known creators at this point. They just came out with like the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And, you know, the fact that this is created by Christopher Miller automatically becomes anticipated. And so this first episode is the setup, is the putting the chess pieces on the chessboard, but it's also an introduction to all these characters, which are the players, which are the suspects that will run through this entire series. And it's basically about a wedding. It's basically about Zoe's sister Grace getting married to this character named Edgar, who's played by Zach Woods. But very similar to the first season, we have the setup where it shows us these two individuals, Zoe and of course Sam Richardson's Aniq character, are now together. They're in they've been in a relationship for almost a year now, and they basically travel to the homestead of Edgar's family, who's made up of people like Elizabeth Perkins, who plays Isabel, the mother, Anna Konkle, who was in Pen 15, who plays Hannah, the stepsister of Edgar, and then we have Grace's family, which is also Zoe's family, who are played by people like Jeong, who plays Fang. We also have Vivian Wu, who plays the mother, and then we have people like Ulysses, who's played by John Cho, and then of course we have, you know, we have other people like Travis, who's played by Paul Walter Hauser, who's kind of, we'll find out, we'll talk about that in the second episode. But then we have Jack Whitehall, who plays Sebastian, which is kind of I don't know if he's a friend of Edgar or he is just somebody who kind of comes into the mix, but these are the main characters, the main suspects, the ones that could be the murderers, and one of them will be most likely the murderer of Zach Wood's character, because the two, Zoe and Aniq, travel to this house, and then it cuts to like a couple days later. Of course, Edgar has been murdered, and he's found dead on the bed by his bride Grace. And this episode basically is the like structural chessboard that's being placed out. And because of the situation at hand, and Aniq and Zoe have been through this before, Aniq actually ends up calling Danner, who is now a book writer and has actually left the force. So therefore, he needs her help to basically uncover the mystery of who murdered Zach Woods' Edgar character. And I love this first episode for the simple fact that it basically is, we get all the kind of what is going on from Aniq's point of view, as the first episode of the first season did, where he explains that this was a wedding party, that he was in that meet the parents type situation where he went there, he was not really welcomed by Isabella, who is the mother, played by Elizabeth Perkins, who comes off kind of like a mean woman. She's almost a little bit racist in a lot of respects. It's very, very funny. But basically, Grace and Edgar are getting married, and it just becomes a whole thing of like, you know, antics and things go wrong. And basically, for like, one of the things that happens to Aniq is like, Aniq's car runs, like, it was in the park, but it unfortunately rolls down and runs into Fang's shaped ice truck, which is funny in its own right. And it's like all these things start happening where Aniq just feels like he can't do anything right. And like, on top of everything, you know, it's very, very funny and very unique to watch Aniq just go through all these trials and tribulations. At some point, he agrees to go pick up Fang's family, the grandparents. He ends up messing that up, and he picks up the wrong grandparents who think that they're going on a wine tasting adventure. And those are the kinds of things that happen. There's a thing where, you know, Ulysses, who's the funkle of the family, who ends up being the uncle of course, Grace and Zoe, shows up, and he's like this guy who comes on a horse. And, you know, John Cho, who's very funny in his own right, comes in the mix, and he wants, as a way to celebrate Edgar coming into the family, to drink this fermented cows or fermented bull milk or something like that. And instead of Edgar doing like he was supposed to, Aniq comes into the mix, and he ends up like tasting it and ends up like spitting it up on Vivian, the mother of Zoe. And like, there's like the whole sequence running through the whole entire episode of him just like smelling like it and stuff like that. And he's just trying to do everything in his power, and it's just not working. I love the idea of what Sam Richardson does, because Sam Richardson is a very underrated comedian. I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but Wolves Within has Sam Richardson in it, and he's very, very funny in that. This feels like you can tell he's not the murderer, so he's given a lot more like levity, or a lot of the weight pushed off of him, because he's talking to Danner's character while she's on the phone, and he's explaining everything. And it's just it's funny to watch. It really is. It's funny to see this whole setup, because Aniq is the outsider. But what's really funny is like they roll to a house full of just like white people, and it feels like something out of Get Out, which is kind of funny. And just the nature of how he's treated is very much, you know, for instance, like Grace has like, she's as she calls it, unnecessary crochet maker. So she's crocheted this thing that he mistakes for Obama, but it's actually like this thing you put over like pans and stuff like that. It's of him. It's just really funny. And like I said, the car stuff that happens. And I really love the nature of just how crazy and bonkers this series gets. And it gets even bonkers here, because not only is he talking to Danner on the phone and he's trying to explain all this to her, you know, watch the nature of these two and how they've kind of like grown since the first season. It's a well put together, well structured, great chemistry of a moment. Like I said, because it's Aniq telling his point of view, there's not really a genre moment in this segment. It's more of just like straightforward, what exactly happened, what did he see? And I love that about it. And I love, you know, the idea that all these characters are, you know, represented. For instance, Sebastian, the Jack Whitehall character, is very much very debonair, very gorgeous looking man, and he really shows it. And Paul Walter Hauser is really creepy, but he gives off a vibe of like he is a detective, but he's like one of those like fall detectives, or one of those guys that just doesn't seem to be on the point. And it's very, very funny. It's hilarious. it really shows how insane this situation is going to become as it moves along. I love that Aniq is he's trying to do everything in his power to make himself look good to the family, but it's not working. He gets attacked by the by the dog, but Isabella tells him to kick the dog because to adhere to dominance. So he does it, but she disappears, and Fang, the Ken Jeong character, is standing there, why'd you kick the dog? I was showing it dominance. I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, that's unfortunately what Neek's character represents. He's that guy who just seems to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And in the end, it's an episode that, focuses on just how Aniq got to the situation, how the situation started, and what exactly does Danner need in the story to get her story rolling. Tiffany Haddish is very, very funny. So she quips a lot as he's talking, and he's trying to play it off like it's not a sequel. And there's a lot of inside jokes and a lot of, meta jokes about how Aniq's in another situation where there's a murder. So obviously it's Aniq 2, the sequel. So it makes a lot of sense that he's like, I guess that's true. I guess that's right. And it's beautifully done. I love the simple fact that Zach Woods, who has to play the Dave Franco character in this, where he's dead, he's not alive anymore. He has to play dead, but he has to show up in parts as a very awkward individual. I love that about that. It's what Zach Woods does best, is he's a very awkward looking human being, and he plays that to his strengths. And that's why I think Zach Woods is one of those underrated comedians, where he can just play the weird awkward guy, but he's so funny at doing it that when you get to the second episode, which is titled Grace, and it shows kind of what their continuation story is, I love just how he plays it off. He actually has it's like a lizard or a gecko of some sort called Roxanne that he always has on his shoulders. He feeds it white chocolate. There's a funny joke. There's a funny situation where Aniq knows that white chocolate's not actually real chocolate. It doesn't have any cacao in it. And there's a great moment where he feeds it to Roxanne, and it just, it allows this kind of whole situation to play out. And it leads into a really funny moment where, once Aniq takes a shower, he's late. He needs to put this thing called a vow box on because they're doing the wedding. They're doing the whole thing situation. Hannah is officiating the wedding and stuff like that. And so this vow box is something that, because Edgar is very awkward, he doesn't like to be around public and stuff like that. He doesn't really like talking around people. He basically created this box that you put over the bride and groom so that they can read their vows, and you have no idea what they're saying, but the comedic aspect of the physical humor that Sam Richardson does, where he puts the vow box onto it, but he's falling backwards. It's very heavy. It's really, really funny to watch. It shows that he's very much a physical comedian when it comes to that. And I love what Sam Richardson does. And then I love at the end where Jack Whitehall's character, Sebastian, just picks up the box and lays it on the ground. It just shows that Aniq's one of the, he's not very strong, but Jack Whitehall, Sebastian character being that really debonair, very good looking individual. You could tell he could just pick up stuff easily. He could swoon any woman. I just love that kind of stuff. And I find it funny. I love the fact that we get the setup of how the night of the wedding, we end up finding out that Edgar says some stuff, calls everybody the devil. He is really drunk. He really something wrong with him. And Grace, the wife now of Edgar, takes him to his room, and then the next morning he's of course found dead. And it's a perfect setup. It really is. It is beautifully done. It's well written. There's a lot of great moments with each individual character. There's a lot of stuff that's thrown out there, whether it be the purse dropping on the ground, revealing some stuff from Isabella, whether it be kind of Sebastian's kind of his awkward, not as awkward, but it's kind of rumination, kind of not really, you kind of get the feel that there's something behind his eyes that you're not seeing. The fact that cryptocurrency is brought into the mix, and that Edgar's character has this room with this safe that has a bunch of crypto pieces in it that is very valuable. That gets brought into the mix, to the fact that Grace, we'll find out later who she is and what she is in the next episode, which I'll talk about. Isabella being kind of the angry mother. Hannah, her character will get a little development in the second episode, which I'll talk about. And the Fang family, the Ken Jeong and Vivian and Grace and all these characters, the only person that doesn't seem or the only two people that don't seem like the murderers are, of course, the people from the first season, which includes Zoe and Aniq. And that's going to be something very very pertinent to this story because it's going to allow these two individuals to maybe be on the outside. It would be a really interesting turn if in the end it was like Zoe that ended up killing him, because it would take a character that was built up from the first season and really kind of make it interesting. But at this stage of this first episode, and this right where we're at, there is no individual that you can kind of pinpoint to be in the murderer. You could say it's Isabella, but what proof do you have at the moment outside of her just being a very angry person? She's kind of racist towards everyone, including Asia family and the black gentleman, which I find kind of funny. She's also just that matriarch where she just has like some really serious issues. You could blame Hannah, but you don't really know much about her. You know, she's just kind of a very weird stepsister, which we learn later on. You could blame Grace, but you really don't know. She's the first person that gets blamed because she has the blue pills that you see, but we'll find out later on. You could blame, you know, Travis, which is the Paul Walter Hauser character. You just don't know at this point. And that's what I love about the series does. I love the fact that the first episode gives us just enough to start the story, to put the pieces on the chessboard. And each individual episode after that will give us more and more of the story about how this kind of situation took place, how it works out. And this first episode is just like, here we are. Here's our situation. We bring some characters from the first season back. We have Danner back in the mix, which has a great kind of payoff at the end. And it leads into the second episode, which is called Grace. So it's a great first episode. I think it's actually better than the first season. I think it works well. I think it's more well written. I think it's funnier, and generally made me laugh in several parts. So overall, I'm going to give the first episode a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I think everybody's great in it. I think it's a great group of cast of characters. I think they're playing their parts really well, and for the first episode, it really shows that this is going to be a great second season, or at least I hope. I hope this doesn't fall by the wayside. But I've heard it's a great season. I haven't seen the other 8 episodes, so yeah. For the first 2 episodes I've seen, they're pretty great. So, but with that said, that's going to do it. That's going to be my take on the Afterparty Season 2, Episode 1, which is called Aniq Part 2, the sequel. Definitely worth a watch. Look forward to my other video, which will be just right after this video, posted the same day, since 2 episodes posted on the same day. But yeah, in the comments below, tell me what you think of this episode. Who do you think the killer is at this point? If you don't know, probably all right, because I don't know. But like I said, just let me know in the comments below. But with that said, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell. Top the fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.